Good afternoon. My name is Bobby Zirkin, former state senator from Baltimore County, here on behalf of the Maryland State Bar Association as we continue to interview candidates for office. Today we have been and are continuing to interview candidates for governor and for lieutenant governor here at the beautiful University of Maryland, Baltimore County. As we approach the July primary election, the State Bar remains committed to our members and to the public to connect in a nonpartisan forum about the issues that are of importance to the public at large and to the legal profession. MSBA has appreciated the positive relationship it has always had with the executive branch of government, and we look forward to continuing that important relationship. Today we're here with Robin Ficker, candidate for governor. If you want to watch this interview or others, please visit our website at msba.org/connectwiththecandidates. All right, so much for the introduction. I'm here again today with Robin Ficker, who is running as a Republican for governor. And welcome, Robin. Thank you so much for being here with us with MSBA.
My pleasure to be here.
All right, well, let's get right into it. For those who may not know you, give us a little bit about your background, what you do for a living, how you have come to decide to run for governor of the state of Maryland.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a lifelong Marylander. I've placed 25 ballot measures on the ballot in Maryland's most populous county, Montgomery County. They have received 2,537,403 votes, more votes than Larry Hogan and Ben Jealous got put together. We've effectuated term limits over the opposition of every elected official in 5 editorials from the Washington Post. We got 70% of the vote for term limits. As a result, 5 of the members of the county council could not run for re-election in the last election, and this year 3 more can't run. We also got a limit on property taxes, despite the opposition of every elected official, which requires a unanimous vote of the 9-member county council to increase property tax revenues more than the rate of inflation. And that stopped property tax increases cold for about a decade until the council then overrode the limit unanimously, gave us a 9% increase, but I was waiting for them with term limits, and then 5 of those tax increase specialists could not run for re-election.
And this is in Montgomery County?
This is in Montgomery County, which is the largest county. And we also got a prohibition against operating garbage dumps and sewage sludge trenching, 2 different questions in residential zones. All these questions have gotten about 40% or more of the vote, and I would say a majority of them dealt with limiting property taxes.
Okay. And so, a little bit about your personal background and what you do and again, how you've come to decide to run for this office.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Maryland. I went to the United States Military Academy. I'm the only person with an honorable discharge from the U.S. Army running. I'm the only farmer running. I have a working farm where we grow sunflowers, hemp, 500 fruit trees. We have some chickens. We've had cattle in the past. We partner with a university in Frederick to Hood College. And I also am the only registered Maryland real estate broker running. I practiced law, although I'm not now. I practiced law for 48 years in Maryland, completed over 40,000 cases, defense cases in every court in the state. I also overturned 4 state laws in federal court, including 2 that were declared constitutional by the father of one of the candidates for Attorney General, Miss O'Malley. Her father was the Attorney General before her. He said that these 2 laws were constitutional. The federal court said otherwise and ruled for me. And then just this past year, I was able to strike down in federal court the laws in Talbot County, which limited the size and duration of political signs. I had posted 4x8 political signs with the permission of property owners on many of the lawns on the way to Ocean City, where I campaigned just about every weekend for the last 3 years. And all of a sudden, the signs were gone, And I wondered why. I went up to the homeowners, and they showed me a letter they had gotten from the Talbot County government saying, if you don't take down your robin signs, we're going to fine you $1,000 a day. So some of these people who were elderly, of course, took their signs down. I went to federal court, and Judge Russell, a district court judge in Baltimore, granted a preliminary injunction to he ruled against Talbot County against their limit on sizes, and they voluntarily agreed that their limit on duration of the signs were constitutional. So that's why you see all these political signs over there on the Eastern Shore, which you didn't before. They say that democracy dies in darkness. Well, I think those signs are emblems of democracy and showing that democracy is alive and well in Maryland.
Okay. And so now you're running for governor.
Yes.
Let's move on to should you prevail in the July primary and then against a Democratic opponent in November and a Libertarian opponent. What does a Robin Ficker administration look like? And by that I mean, let's talk some specific issues, like specific, maybe top, it's always three, I don't know where three became the number, but top 3 issues with some specificity as to what you'd like to do.
Well, on day one, I'm the only candidate running for governor in either party who wants to cut taxes. I want to cut the state sales tax 2 cents by 1/3, which gives the average homeowner household a fiscal stimulus of $780 a year. You talk about eliminating the automatic increase in the gas tax. That CPI increase will save you about $50 a year. I want to cut the sales tax, $780 a year per household. No state has ever cut its sales tax. We're bordered by Delaware, which has no sales tax, 85-mile border with Delaware. Pennsylvania, Virginia, West Virginia have 6% sales tax. If we make ours 4%, that gives us a competitive advantage. And also, more importantly, besides giving that fiscal stimulus to individuals, sends out the word nationwide, I believe, that Maryland is business friendly. And the big companies that have been shunning Maryland while our Maryland Department of Commerce has been fast asleep, really in dereliction of duty, I believe. The big companies over the last couple of years, multi-billion-dollar companies, which have shunned Maryland with their multi-billion-dollar expansions, and I can run down the list, or have moved their corporate headquarters, none of them have come to Maryland. And I think that by sending out a message, cutting our sales tax, and having a jobs strike force, which instead of being wallpaper, passive, we will be in the air within 1 hour when we hear these big companies are expanding, and go out there and try to bring back some well-paying jobs. And I can just list for you very quickly because I can. We'll
get into all that. I'm trying to get to the kind of the top 3 issues.
Yeah,
so
well,
we can
that's a big issue
so
because
cut sales tax by 2 cents, which we'll get into some specifics about that. What's number 2?
Yeah, well, number 2 is the job strike force to try to bring these multi-billion-dollar expansions back to Maryland. I can just give you one quick example. Intel, you've heard of Intel. It's the largest semiconductor company, probably in the world, although Taiwan Semiconductor may be a little larger. They just made the largest private investments in Ohio history and Arizona history, where they're building $20 billion plants, paying $60 an hour to people to make semiconductors. And if we had such a plant outside of Baltimore, I think a lot of people would put their guns and fentanyl away and go and earn good salaries there making semiconductors. But Maryland's Department of Commerce has fallen asleep. We've drawn no new businesses, and there's a huge list of companies. I've been tracking them over the last couple of years. Boeing, you've heard of Boeing, it's the world's largest airplane manufacturer, just decided to move its corporate headquarters from Chicago, not to BWI, not to Maryland, but to Northern Virginia. If we had a company like that, then shortly after that, within weeks, Raytheon, which is the largest manufacturer of airplane engine parts, they decided to move their corporate headquarters from Massachusetts to Northern Virginia, not BWI, not Maryland. So these are opportunities missed. And as a result, We have people who are engaged in activities of leisure. They're not keeping busy. They do some bad things. We have other people who aren't earning the salaries they could be if we had these fine companies which bring in lots of other small companies. So that's another major issue. And then the third issue, you asked for three. The third issue is that, I drive about 55,000 miles a year. And I don't want to have to worry about maybe getting a parking ticket while I'm driving on I-270 or the Beltway. I think when you're driving your car, you have freedom to travel. You can go where you want, you can go when you want. And we have not kept our roadways up to date. And I'm very much in favor of improving these roadways, the Beltway, 695, I-270, Route 5. There's many of these roads that need to be improved, and that'll be one of my goals as well. In addition to a Bay Bridge, I spend every weekend for the last 3 years, summers, in Ocean City, and I can tell you that it is an economic driver for the state of Maryland. We have to make it easy for people to get there, and they don't want to be backed up 11 miles trying to do that.
All right. Let's do some specifics on your three, just some specific questions,
Sure.
and we'll get to some more issues. The sales tax, the 2 cents sales tax reduction, what is the fiscal cost of that to the state
It's
budget?
$1.75 billion.
Okay, so I guess, where in the state budget, I wasn't on a budget committee, I was on Judiciary and Judicial Proceedings Committee, but I did spend one horrible year on the budget committee, and so
Right.
I do understand, as you know, we have a constitutional balanced budget in this state. So whatever dollars you take out or whatever dollars you put in have to come out, and whatever dollars you take out have to come in if you don't put it into the rainy day fund. So that being said, specifically, so that people know what's going to be cut, what's the $1.75 billion come out of?
Well, what it's going to be cut out of, it's going to be cut out of the increases we've been getting in our state budget. In the last 5 years, our state budget has increased 50%. Since 2008, it's increased way faster than the cost of inflation each one of those years. It's gone from, just in the last 5 years, from $40 billion up to almost $62 billion. So it shouldn't be increasing that fast. We need to also think, in addition about the state budget, we need to think about individuals' budgets.
Let me stop you for 1 second.
Sure.
I just want to, it's because, often when people say, you're not the only candidate who's talked about cutting taxes, and I'll ask the same question of all
Right.
of them. Because we have a constitutional amendment, like I
Right.
put in bills that cut the estate tax, or increase spending, for example, for class size reduction, over the years. And in Annapolis, maybe not in Washington, but in Annapolis, you have to specify, you have to say where that's going to come from. So my question is, if you put in a $1.7, $1.8 billion reduction, which is fine, where is it going to get cut from specifically?
The first thing I'll look at are the specific increases of $20+ billion we've had in our state budget over the last 5 years. I'd go back and look at these budgets we've had, and look at the increases, and I'd pare them back. I'd take $1.75 billion out because
So out of education.
Well, part of it, yes. We have an unfunded liability. They're not telling us where the Kerwin plan is going, how we're going to tax.
Well, they haven't funded it yet. So they haven't
funded it yet. But I can tell you they're going to have to fund it less by $1.75 billion, because I'm thinking about the family budget, which is being hit by 8.6% inflation. Everybody's hurting.
Sure, of course. I just think it's important and responsible, as I'm sure you do as
Sure.
well, to say specifically what you're going to do. I don't think it's increased by $20 billion over the last couple of years, but
Well, it has.
putting the numbers aside, it's important to tell people what you're going to get cut rather than be vague about it. It's important to say, I want to do the Bay Bridge, but that's going to cost X numbers of billions of dollars, and that's going to come from here, there. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's important to be specific with people, particularly with lawyers.
Sure. I know lawyers like to be specific. I can tell you that over about the last 5, maybe 6 years, the budget's increased from $40 billion to almost $62 billion. I would look at that $20 billion in increases, and I'd take $1.75 billion out of it. I mean, you know, the Kerwin people say we're gonna pay for this program. They're not specific how they're going to pay for it, but I'm specific about cutting the money that they're going to use to pay for it.
So you're against the blueprint? You're against the education funding, is that accurate?
No, I'm not opposed to it, but I'm in favor of bringing in some of the big companies that are shunning Maryland. For instance, Doug Ducey, the governor of Arizona, is a good friend of mine. He was able to increase state salaries and also cut taxes in Arizona because he brought in Taiwan Semiconductor, $12 billion plant, and Intel, $20 billion plant. We're not increasing our revenue base. No private industry is coming to Maryland. And when we get that in, then we'll be able to have more money to spend for the blueprint and education. I'm very pro-education. I got 3 degrees. My dad was a Rhodes Scholar. He brought me home 6 books a week from the Library of Congress. I'm very pro-education, but I'm also pro-family budget, and people are hurting now with this rate of inflation and with the high gas prices.
All right, let's switch topics for a second and talk about the election. You know, you're running in the Republican primary, and there's obviously a debate going on. In fact, on television right now, you can watch what's going on with the January 6th committee. I've never heard you talk about this before, so I just want to kind of, you know, put it to bed or let you talk about this issue. Do you believe that there was any issue, that there were problems the way that some candidates in this race have said with the 2020 election?
Well, one problem I think that we still have in Maryland is that absentee ballots are being mailed out to everybody. There was a question on the form. Everyone in Maryland got a request for an absentee ballot form. One of the questions was, do you want an absentee ballot for all future elections? Some of those people are going to die. Some are going to move away. We're going to have tens of thousands, if not more, hot ballots lying around in a few years in Maryland. And I can tell you, I would not leave my credit card on this table and go out to my car, and I wouldn't leave a hot ballot either. People are going to mail in those hot ballots. My son, who hadn't lived with me since 2008, was mailed a ballot, a hot ballot, okay? I could have easily have filled it out and sent it in, but I couldn't have gone down to the polls and impersonated someone.
Did you ask for it?
No.
Oh, so they just sent it to you?
They sent it to him. I could not have gone to the polls and impersonated someone 35 years younger. You have to have a voter ID to go to a bank, to deal with a bank, to deal with MVA. Everyone goes to MVA. So I see no reason that people shouldn't have to have a voter ID and shouldn't be sent an absentee ballot unless they request it that year.
So let me ask you a question. Back to the original question, which is, so that's what you want to do.
Yeah.
My question to you is, because at least from what I've been listening to, from the Attorney General on down, all supporters of the Republican, former Republican president, everybody has said that it's nonsense what they've been saying, that in Arizona and Georgia, and I guess one of the candidates in this race wants to even look at Maryland, but in the ones that were being talked about, that it was complete nonsense. In fact, that wasn't quite the word they used, but let's just use that word. I guess my question is, you're an attorney, so what do you think about that?
Well, I'm really not worried about what happened in the other states. I'm worried about what happened in Maryland. I'm a lifelong resident of Maryland. My dad worked in the Library of Congress. He worked with senators. He used to write speeches on both sides of one issue for 2 different senators in the same day. And I know that there's more than one side to every question, but I'm concerned about what happens here in Maryland.
I guess I really want to ask you, though, I'm sorry. I want to ask you, you're good, as all lawyers are talking. My question to you is, one of your opponents in the Republican primary called Mike Pence a traitor and said that the election was rigged. Do you agree with him?
Well, I'm not worried about Mike Pence at this point unless he
Did he do something wrong?
Unless he runs for president.
Did he do something wrong?
And that opponent, I might add, isn't talking about cutting the sales tax. He's not talking about bringing jobs into Maryland. That's what I'm talking about. I can't talk about everything. Just because someone brings up an issue, Kelly Schultz doesn't want to debate. She's turned down every debate.
My question, though, like, you're running for governor of the state of Maryland.
Yes.
I'm a citizen of the state of
Right.
Maryland, and this is a big issue. Like, it's one that people have very strong opinions on. And I'm asking you because you are, in fact, an attorney. And I
I
understand you
was
don't
an
want
attorney. I'm not an attorney now. I'm not practicing now.
Okay, not a practicing attorney, but legally trained. And so I guess the question is, if you have 100 cases that show no evidence of something, don't you think it is irresponsible, or do you think it is irresponsible of one of your opponents to continue saying the thing that has no shred of evidence? Don't you find that irresponsible?
I believe in robust discussion of the issues, and that particular opponent, I think I know who you're referring to, has appeared in just about every single debate, and that's fine with me. The other one doesn't mention that.
I'm just curious, why can't you answer the question?
Well,
why can't you just answer the question it seems like a simple one. When I ran for the House of Delegates, I ended up winning by 98 votes in my first election. It was a robust, landslide. As on election day, it was 97, and then the 400 some odd absentees. And my opponent gave me a call, and that's the way it's always been done.
Yeah.
The former president, the standard bearer, I guess, for your party, has, every time he has lost an election, from losing to Ted Cruz in Iowa all the way through, has cried rigged election if he didn't happen to win it. And I guess from a Republican standpoint, you're a Republican and a smart one, why is it so hard just to say there was no evidence of this? Why is it so difficult for people just to simply say, yeah, of course Joe Biden won. It was certified by people all over the country. Why is that so difficult?
Look, I'm not going to come here or anywhere else and really spend my time criticizing other Republicans. I have lived in Maryland for a long time, long before that particular president was even in the public stage. I've been putting questions on the ballot since 1974. I believe in peaceful change. And if people want to talk about an issue, that's up to them. I am interested in cutting taxes, bringing business into Maryland. I'm not interested in some of these other issues, but I respect the right of others to discuss whatever it is they want, and they can be judged on what they're discussing.
Okay, let's move on to another issue, which has become a hot button one, and then we're going to talk a little bit about public safety. But the Supreme Court has had a few big decisions, two of them in the last 2 weeks that have, one affected the entire country, one that dramatically affects Maryland. So let's start with the first one that affects the entire country, which is the obliteration of Roe v. Wade. And so I guess the question is, where do you stand on that issue?
Well, I'm generally pro-life, always have been. I would prefer to see, quite frankly, the people of Maryland decide that issue rather than some judges that I've never met before. And it's fine with me if they decide that. One thing that concerns me about abortion is that it's almost like, in some sense, what the Ku Klux Klan would suggest, because they would think of ways to limit the black population. Here we have 40 to 45% of the abortions are involved with young black women. And I think that's disproportionate, and that concerns me. And the proponents of abortion never mention that. I think there's a racial aspect to it. And I was appointed by Rosa Parks to be the first general counsel for the National Caucus on the Black Aged. I marched with Dr. Martin Luther King on August 28, 1963. I'll be the first Maryland governor to have done so. And I know discrimination when I see that, and it just seems to me that there's too much pressure on young black women in that regard. So
Maryland voters have made that decision 30 some odd years ago. It's enshrined in our statute. And I guess one of my questions, two questions. One, it's kind of a yes-no thing, is the General Assembly seems poised to enshrine it not just in statute but in the Maryland Constitution. Thoughts on that? And then I guess the second one is a more specific issue. As a pro-lifer, do you believe in any exceptions? And let me give you the most horrific one, just because you always go to extremes. An 11-year-old gets raped by an uncle. So you have just put rape and incest together, because people talk about those separately as an exception. So you have an 11-year-old raped by an uncle and doesn't come forward, let's say, in the 6 weeks or whatever it is that some of these states have done. Do you believe in Maryland that there should be exceptions for things like that, despite your thoughts about being pro-life?
Generally, rape and incest are exceptions to abortion law. They generally are and generally have been. But, I believe in peaceful change. If anyone, I hold the Maryland record for putting matters on the ballot, 25 matters on the ballot. If we want to have a question on the ballot about abortion in Maryland, that's fine with me. And I think that it promotes peaceful change. It promotes discussion, robust discussion. I'm all for that. So if the legislature wants to pass a law, I'll look at what they pass, and then it takes an extraordinary majority to pass a constitutional amendment on the ballot. So, let's put it before the voters. That's fine with me.
Okay. Second one is the other case, which was decided last week, 2 weeks ago, which was the case dealing with New York's law on, I don't know what they call it, but for us it was the Handgun Roster Review Board, and then it was the administrative law process. I mean, it's a fairly complex law in Maryland about the right to carry. It looks like the Supreme Court not only overturned the New York law, but ours was quite similar, and so it's overturned ours as well for all intents and purposes. Do you agree with their decision? And if you do, and all of a sudden Maryland is a right to carry state, do you agree with that? And if you think there need to be adjustments in that law, what are they?
Well, I believe in the Second Amendment. I attended the U.S. Military Academy. I'm a lifetime member of the NRA. I was an expert marksman at West Point, and I believe in the Second Amendment, and I'm really, I look at it like the people in Ukraine would look at it. I think there's a right to have a gun, and you have to use it legally.
Okay, are there any changes that you would make to Maryland law based on what happened with the New York with the case that was before the Supreme Court?
I am not going to initiate changes. If the legislature wants to bring changes to me, I'll look at it very carefully.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about public safety. There have been, on gun violence, not just mass shootings in places like Texas and Maryland for that matter, but lots of violence on the streets, not just in Baltimore City, but across the state. And I guess my question is, from a long-term perspective and a short-term perspective, what does a Ficker administration do specifically about the issues? And I understand you're trying to bring jobs here and corporations, but in addition to that, there is a whole world of criminal law, and criminal procedure and all kinds of other things to discuss on that issue. What does a Ficker administration look like on those types of issues in public safety?
Well, I've been a defense attorney, and I believe in individual rights, and I've had lots of gun cases, I've had murder cases, and I believe that we need to protect the right of an individual and not do what Putin would do in his court, or what the English used to do, what the sheriff of Nottingham used to do. We have individual rights here, but I think you're downplaying this job situation. We don't have jobs in Maryland, and I want to read this list. I know it'll just take a second. Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Global Foundries, Google, Boeing, Intel, Microsoft, Nucor Steel, Samsung, Taiwan Semiconductor, Texas Instruments, Toyota, Raytheon, Hyundai. All these companies, just in the last couple of years, have shunned Maryland. If we had a big plant to take the place of Bethlehem Steel, so all these young guys who are idle, who aren't realizing their potential, or young women, could have a well-paying job and have a career path, I think crime would go down.
And what are you going to do to bring them? What is specifically are your initiatives to bring in?
We're going to have a job strike force. And for instance, Allegheny County and Garrett County. The three biggest employers out there are Frostburg State, the hospital, and the jail. There's no private industry out there. And I'm going to take a guy who I hope is the new state senator out there, Jake Shade, and he's going to be on the job strike force. And every time we hear of a big company expanding with a multi-billion-dollar expansion, and there's plenty of them, we're going to fly out there and talk to these people, and he's going to have a chance to say, this is why you should locate in Allegheny or Garrett County. Nucor Steel just made the largest private investment in West Virginia history with a steel sheet plant and a steel rod plant. That should have been put in Western Maryland, but the Maryland Department of Commerce was asleep. They didn't care, and I care about that. We're going to bring some jobs in so these people who are getting involved with crimes and fooling around with the fentanyl, which is the #1 cause of death for people between 18 and 45, we're going to give them job opportunities so that they have a future, and we're going to give them hope. That's what we're going to do.
Okay. And so on the issue of gun violence, in addition to what you're talking about, although just to be fair, I think people should actually look up and see the jobs that have come into Maryland, because at least in my time in the General Assembly, we often met with lots of employers that were coming in, lots of efforts to go out there. I know just, from my area, within the Department of Commerce, there's a pretty robust group that goes out to Israel to try to do partnerships with Israeli companies. We have partnerships all over the world. The governor's out doing that. So it's a little, I would have to say, listen, you're not before a judge right now, but it is a little unfair to say that the people are asleep and there's no effort and that there's no successes, because there are a lot of successes. And I don't think people should be. Do you think it's responsible to tell people that no jobs have come here when maybe that's not accurate?
I think that one of the candidates in this running for this seat, this open seat, which is open for the first time in 8 years, was the Secretary of Commerce, and she's refusing to debate. She would not debate us. The Bar Association did not have a Republican debate. You had a Democratic debate. We could have a debate on this issue.
I'm in favor
of debating that with her, not necessarily you.
Okay, well, I can't really answer for a campaign. I'm just asking you questions. To be fair, though, to the State Bar Association, that's not quite the history of what happened. But let's not.
You want to explore that? I'd be happy to do that.
I'm sure we can. So let me ask you about the other constitutional amendment that is going on, which is that of marijuana legalization. Mm-hmm. How are you planning on voting on that issue? And what are your thoughts about that particular topic?
Well, I believe that adults can do pretty much what they want to do as long as it's not hurting other people. Fentanyl hurts other people, that's for sure. It's spread around, it kills people. I would never use marijuana myself because I'm an athlete. I don't smoke cigarettes. I think that it hurts your lung power, but I am not going to tell people that they can't do it.
So you're for the constitutional amendment?
I would probably vote for the constitutional amendment, but I don't smoke marijuana, and I don't think I don't smoke cigarettes and never have, but some people do, and I don't condemn them for it.
So if the constitutional amendment does pass, which it seems primed to do, one of the first orders of business in the General Assembly will be dealing with the regulatory structure of this new industry in the state, which is a complex topic. The taxation's complicated, the sellers, the distributors, all those different aspects, and that's not just a legislative fix. That's from the state government, from the executive branch. And so what is your specific plan in dealing with what could be a new industry that comes to Maryland as early as January?
Well, we want it to be the outlets to be fairly distributed, but I can tell you another thing from someone who's defended lots of DUI cases. I don't want people on the Maryland highways who are driving under the influence of marijuana, and our citizens have to realize that. Like in Colorado, there have been lots of accidents involving people driving under the influence of marijuana. And I also don't think that kids in high school are going to be rising stars if they're smoking marijuana instead of studying and participating in athletics. I'm an athlete. My daughter was second in the world Ironman triathlon. I built a big track in our backyard, which we used as a velodrome and a track. I'm for pro athletics and pro reading too. My dad was a Rhodes Scholar in the Library of Congress. He brought me home all these books. I'm going to have a reading contest to see who can read the most books in every class, in every school in Maryland. Then we're going to have them come down to Annapolis and get a governor's reading award. That's what I'm focusing on. I'm not focusing on marijuana and things like that. I'm accentuating the positive, eliminating the negative. I'm for lighting a candle rather than cursing the darkness. I want young people not to be focused on marijuana or gambling for that matter. I want them to think about improving their bodies, improving their minds, and being booming successes in new companies that are coming to Maryland.
Okay, so without getting off that topic for a second, because I know a lot of people are interested in what the gubernatorial candidates have to say about it, you have a medical cannabis industry which took multiple years of putting together. It went through multiple renditions. This is something that will immediately on day one face the next governor of Maryland should the referendum pass, which if you believe polls, it will. And so pretty overwhelmingly. So again, I understand your personal feelings about smoking marijuana, but you said you were in favor of the constitutional amendment and it's likely to pass. And so as governor, what is it that you plan to do? Because it is in fact an executive branch function, at least part of it, is putting together this industry. So I assume you've spent some time thinking about it. What does that industry look like?
I can tell you what I'm going to do. Okay, I have attended 2 meetings of the Republican Governors Association, one in Chicago, one in Phoenix, several-day meetings. I've met Governor Youngkin. I had pictures taken with maybe 20 Republican governors. There may be 30 of them now with Governor Youngkin of Virginia. And some of these states, some of these other states have implemented newly marijuana allowances. And I'm going to talk to the governors of these states where marijuana has just come in and get ideas as to how to implement that. When I see that question's going to pass, as soon as I see that, I'm going to be consulting with governors of other states to get their very best ideas, because I want to make Maryland the state that has the best ideas, and I would talk to the conglomeration of other governors that's implemented such a problem.
Okay. Moving on to completely different, let's talk a little bit about the environment. Maryland, last General Assembly session, passed the climate action, I can't remember the name of the bill, but something dealing with climate change. There's issues about energy independence. Several years ago, the General Assembly and Governor Hogan together banned fracking. So your thoughts on environmental issues and where Maryland should go?
Sure. Well, in 1975, the Calvert Cliffs nuclear plant was built in Maryland. I toured it way back when it was first built. It supplies 34% of Maryland's electrical energy. It services about 1 million homes. Unfortunately, it sells some of that electricity to Delaware at lower prices, which it shouldn't. I'd like to see that plant doubled to serve 2 million homes, to double the electrical output. That is clean energy. We have a plant that's been working since 1975. They've disposed of the nuclear waste properly. There's never been a problem there. I want to expand that plant, and I think that it'll be far less costly. We have to get nuclear regulatory approval, of course, but from day one I'll try to get it. I think it'll be far less costly and far more practical than some of the other ideas of wind and solar, because wind and solar, it's admirable, our goals there, but the EV cars cost quite a bit more than what the average person can afford to pay. I would like to see nuclear energy, when we have a Calvert Cliffs plant here in Maryland, doubled. And that's very clean energy. And the legislature doesn't talk about that. Why is that? I was just at a forum before I came here over at a church in Baltimore. And one of the candidates, the candidate who received the conservation voters' endorsement in the Democratic primary, He didn't mention nuclear. He rattled off. He was talking about hydraulic energy. He was talking about geothermal energy. Do we have that in Maryland? I don't think so. He didn't mention nuclear. I'm going to mention nuclear, and we're going to double the output in Maryland of Calvert Cliffs plant.
Okay. Any other issues? Any thoughts about what the General Assembly did on climate action, on fracking, and so forth?
Well, fracking. I don't think people in Tacoma Park should be able to veto the desire to frack clean natural gas in Allegheny and Garrett County. Those people need jobs. They need support. They need economic support. I think it can be done cleanly. That's why they call it clean natural gas. We export a lot of that to Europe. It's used throughout Europe. I'm in favor of clean natural gas. I think the legislature was very limited in what they did. They looked primarily at solar and wind. They should have looked at clean natural gas and, more importantly, and to a much greater extent, nuclear. Why is it that they're avoiding talking about nuclear? We're going to be talking about it in January, I'll tell you that.
So let me ask you a question on fracking. Because an economic analysis was done, and so whereas the fracking industry would have assisted a few who had reserves under their property, places like Deep Creek Lake, which is an economic engine for Western Maryland, would have gotten destroyed because it's all around it, and that has been the experience, at least, from other places like that. And so I guess the question I would ask to you is have you looked at that issue? Have you looked at, you talk about job growth, but don't the jobs in Deep Creek Lake and the tourist industry for that area, doesn't that count too?
I would never do anything to hurt Deep Creek Lake. I love that place. You can go out there and you can rent a boat with a ski package for half a day for $100 at Bill's Marina. I love that place, and I would never do anything to hurt Deep Creek Lake. If they're going to do any fracking, it can impact Deep Creek Lake.
So that's where the gas is. It's right around Deep Creek Lake.
Like I said, if they're going to do any fracking, it can't adversely affect Deep Creek Lake. I'll make very sure that I'm a Deep Creek Lake, Swallow Falls guy.
Okay. Let me move back to something. So I'm sorry we're jumping around a little bit, but lots to cover.
It's all right.
Several years ago, Governor Hogan, Chris Schenck, from the Republican side, Chris West and others came together, Scott Schellenberger, public defenders, state's attorneys, judges, and so forth, did a 2-year deep dive look at the criminal justice system and came out with a product called the Justice Reinvestment Act, which was at the time at least hailed as a balanced yet very far-reaching criminal justice reform for the state. Bigger by far than anything that they did on Capitol Hill, and perhaps the biggest that any state has done in the country. My question to you is, since you've done criminal law, what did the General Assembly miss? What changes would you make to what is really the biggest criminal law piece of legislation in the last 30 years?
I really don't have a good answer for that. But I have an open mind, and I know that every Marylander knows more about at least one subject than I do. And I know the smartest person picks the best brains. If some legislator wants to make an intelligent change, and David Moon, although he's a very liberal guy, I respect him. He's on the Judiciary Committee. If they come up with good ideas, then I'm open-minded. I get along with both sides. I get along with the Trump side, the Hogan side in the Republican Party, and the Democrats and Republicans. I'm not going to have trouble. I'm not going to make enemies there as governor. I'm going to be very friendly to everyone, and most importantly, I'm a good listener. If they have a good idea as to how we can improve our justice system, I'm willing to go along. But I want to have the choices put to me. I don't want to have the debate limited. I want to have I'll listen to the debate. Come on in. Supreme Court gives you 15 minutes. I'll give you each 15 minutes. Tell me what you want to say, and then I'll.
Do you have any thoughts of your own on it, though? I mean, I would think that as an attorney, as a former criminal defense attorney, that you would have some thoughts about how this works, what you saw in the courtroom over the years, over the decades. any thoughts about where it is that Maryland's lacking. So, for instance, some people think that our expungement law is too restrictive or too expansive. Some people talk about parole and probation as being either not working well enough or working too well. I mean, there's any number of types of issues you could choose from, but are there any that you believe that Maryland needs to work on?
I don't like the fact that we have people violating probation. I know that these guys don't want to be in jail, but I don't like the fact they violate their probation. I just think I'm very pro-jobs, and I think that if we have good jobs that people in jail can come out to, they're much more less likely to be recidivists. Any other ideas for improving the justice system? I'm open-minded. I've completed 40,000 cases in all the courts. I think, on the whole, I'm very happy with the Maryland judges. They all seem fair. They all are. The word I would use is earnest. They're earnest. They're trying to do their best, and I believe that I would give them that opportunity. And if there's a movement to make changes, I'd be willing to listen. What I'm going to do, I'm not coming into this with a closed mind. I'm going to have an open house every Monday morning at 6 a.m. in the governor's mansion. First come, first serve. And anyone in the justice system, any judge, any defendant, they want to come in and give me their idea as to how we can improve our justice system or our state. I'm willing to listen. And that way I'm going to keep my hand on the pulse of Maryland, just like I've been trying to do on the boardwalk in Ocean City, talking to people there while they're relaxed, they're willing to talk. I don't just go to political functions like many of our candidates do. I try to go to people and talk to them in non-political situations. I'm going to have an open house there. If they want to come in, if they're taking the trouble to come down and talk to me at 6 a.m., then it's important, and I'm going to listen, and my lieutenant governor is going to be there, and we're going to have some other people there from my staff. We're going to start the week off right, letting Marylanders know they're the boss.
All right. Let me switch, and I'm getting the high sign a little bit here, so but I have lots of things.
I got plenty of time. We got a couple hours.
Tell my wife. One of the issues that I've tried to talk about with some of the candidates has been in the area of civil law. It's often an issue that does not get discussed. Maryland has some unique laws in the area of civil litigation, and things like dram shop or punitive damages or comparative contributory negligence, or the caps on State and Local Tort Claims Act, or on cases against school boards. It's a whole litany of things which makes Maryland unique. Some say unique in a bad way, some would argue in a good way. Any thoughts about, it's a very open-ended question about the civil litigation system? It's something that other governors have engaged in.
I had a little subspecialty there for a while, defending kids who'd been suspended from school for being called terrorists or talking about guns or whatever. I had a number of cases, not only in Maryland, but in other places. And I enjoyed that very much. And I know that sometimes there are those in the civil system who are unreasonable. I'm really not. I don't have these issues. You mentioned the issues, dram shop, whatever. I don't have them on the front page of my campaign website. But I'm a good listener. I'm willing to listen, and I certainly would never try to restrict the conversation for peaceful change in the civil areas of Maryland.
Do you think we should have dram shop?
I have an open mind on that. I'm willing to listen. If people want to change it, I'd be willing to listen to their reasonable change.
You don't have an opinion on it?
I have opinions, but it's really not part of my platform.
Sure, but this is the MSBA. This is not a debate where you get a minute and a half just to say a Twitter talking point. This is to go deeper and to dive so that people can get a real sense as to what about what candidates' administration would look like and what their thoughts are on a wide range of topics. So, Maryland is one of, I think, 3 states now that has contributory negligence as a standard. It's a big ticket issue.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I have an open mind. I'm not eager to advance ideas to change the contributory negligent issues in Maryland, but I'm willing to listen. I can't focus on every issue, and I'm not focusing on that. It's not part of my campaign platform, and
Okay. And I guess the last one, or one of the last ones that we haven't talked about is transportation. You had spoken about the Bay Bridge, or a second Bay Bridge.
Third.
A third Bay Bridge. There's also, of course, the issues about the Red Line or the Purple Line, mass transit, and highway, and so forth. What are your thoughts on those specific issues? And I've asked all the candidates, if you're for something like an additional Bay Bridge,
how are you going to pay for it?
How are you going to pay for it? Because one of the things I remember you saying quickly was that you wanted to, reduce the gas tax, which is music to people's ears, obviously, with the way gas prices
the
are right
automatic
now.
increase.
But gas tax goes specifically for those very same transportation projects. So, just saying that you're going to limit the increase is political, but not necessarily a real solution. And so I guess I'm trying to drill down a little bit more. If you're interested in doing those things like Red Line, first of all, are you Red Line, Purple Line, the Bay Bridge you're talking about? What's the price tag, and how are you going to pay for it?
Okay. Well, the reason I'm opposed to automatic increases in any tax is that the legislators aren't voting on these things, and I want them to take the responsibility and have a conversation like we are, have a conversation as to whether there should be an increase. I know that the one we got in 2013 was probably the largest gas tax increase in U.S. history. In any state, it was close to it. But I don't think they should have added in automatic increases so legislators could avoid responsibility. I know I have spent countless hours on the boardwalk in Ocean City, and I know there's lots of money coming in from West Virginia, D.C., Pennsylvania, Delaware, New York, New Jersey. It's coming into our state because people are coming to Ocean City. We have to have good access to Ocean City. I remember waiting for hours till the ferry would come and go across the bridge. And we've got to make it easy to get across that Bay Bridge. And how we pay for it, it's going to cost. It's going to cost because it's a huge bridge. It's really a wondrous thing. We're going to have some tolls to go across it, and maybe there should even be some sort of hotel surcharge in Ocean City for that. I don't know, but we must have it.
That doesn't get you billions. That gets you
it
maybe
gets us chump change.
That gets you millions.
Right,
so,
but we're gonna build that bridge, and we're gonna find a way to pay for it. That's a guarantee, and we're not gonna build it 4 years from now. We're gonna build it right away. We're gonna do it now. Mayor Schaefer, he was a friend of mine. We're going to do it now. We're going to build that bridge, and we've pretty much decided where it's going to go. We're going to make it easy. I think we also ought to put a level difference over there at the intersection of 50 and 404. We ought to change the interchange to make it easy to speed people up. In 2 hours on the boardwalk in Ocean City, I can meet people from all 23 counties plus Baltimore City. I just put out a Facebook where I listed like 50 cities where the people I met this past weekend, all across Maryland, every county are from. We've got to make it easy to get to Ocean City, and I don't want to inconvenience the people along the way, but they're benefiting financially too. We'll find a way to pay for it. Part of it's going to be tolls, and part of it's going to be a tax on hotels. We'll find a way to do it. I'm eager to hear from the public how they'd be willing to do it, but they should know Robin's for building that bridge, and he wants it built yesterday.
No tax on Thrasher's fries, though. So.
Well, the Thrasher's fries, I want to cut the tax on Thrasher's fries. A $7 smallest fry there, if you cut the state sales tax, that'll save you 14 cents right there.
All right. So I've gotten the high sign. Thank you so much. Let me do the closing here just to make sure that people know how to come back and watch this interview and others. We'll get back to you in 1 second. Let me just give you the website one more time. It's msba.org/connect with the candidates. We've spent a good hour with Republican candidate for governor, Robin Ficker, talking about a wide range of issues. I want to thank you so much for joining the Maryland State Bar Association for a pretty in-depth talk about some interesting issues. So thank you so much for being here.
I'll go another hour if you want. I love to talk about these issues.
I know you got to get down to Ocean City.
I love to debate. I wanted to have a debate in every county.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here with us with the MSBA. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for your interest in the subject to deal with all these candidates.
Thank you. All right.